Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the ET Stand, the Cronulla Sharks fan podcast, where we let out talking do the football tonight. So in round 12, round 13, round 12 of the NRL 2024 Premiership season, the Sharks playing the Panthers at home in what is billed to be a blockbuster. And we'll take you back to 2005, the time when episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, was about to be top of the box office. Feel Good Inc. was the top song that year. The Socceroos hadn't qualified for a World Cup in 31 years. Johnny Howard was still president. George Bush had just...
I think he was Prime Minister, Matthew.
Yeah, Prime Minister, President, same thing. And actually they're not. But anyway, politics, football, that stuff. Anyway, the key bit, the big news of the year was Adam Dykes back in Sharks colours after 3 years with those Parramatta Eels. He was back, baby, and we were heading into round 1, 2005, buoyed by that change, 1 year into the Stuart Raper era, and, well, it was interesting times. David, what do you remember?
I remember being outrageously excited about the return of Adam Dykes. I think he is probably my all-time favourite Shark, or definitely in my top 5. I remember a match playing against him at Parramatta and just thinking I was just so scared every time he touched the ball. And I just think it was such a shame how he exited the Sharks with that injured knee in the 2001 series, which we do like talking about a lot.
Yes.
So, yeah, I was really excited about the prospect of him playing with Kamali and the return of a few other players as well. It was quite a confronting match against the Panthers from 2004 and 2003, obviously premiers in 2003, and had a interesting time coming in 2004, which we can touch on. So looking forward to going through this one. So it's such an exciting time to be a Sharks fan. So let's get into it.
Yeah, we had plenty of matches to go through when it comes to Sharks versus Panthers. Some other ones we were thinking of were the 2014 season when obviously we got the spoon and Panthers were close to top and got knocked out in a prelim final, ironically against the Bulldogs, same as they did in 04. We'll cover that at a later date. I know Ash Taylor, the Sharks historian, had covered a game from 1992 where we weren't particularly good that year under Arthur Beetson, but it was one of John Docking's last games, and we beat the Panthers at home. They were the reigning premiers. And I think there was also that famous game in the early 90s too when Gus got banished from the sidelines by Bill Gould. Bill Harrigan.
Harrigan.
Bill
I think
Harrigan.
That was a 1994 match.
94, you're right. I think it was John Lang's first year. We won the penalty count and the match, and Phil Gould, I think, has still livid and has mentioned it recently. So plenty of things to cover in our history as we go forward against the Panthers. Plenty of things to look back on. But this was a famous win at the time, a favourite of mine, and that's why I'm specifically covering it this time. Not much coverage.
We just choose your favourite matches on this, don't we, William?
Well,
If we basically just choose the ones you like.
Shout out to our friend Stephen Franklin, who wanted to touch on the, I think it was 50 points to 12 win by the Panthers in the final round of 2010. He had some good reasons for it. It was Luke Cavell's last game before he retired, Trent Barrett's last game. A guy called Trent Grubb played his only first grade match for the Sharks. Nathan Gardner scored a length of field try. Wade Graham carved up for the Panthers, but there's plenty of other content.
You and I were at that game, weren't we?
I think so. I don't remember much of it, apart from, I think, Franco had to remind me. I remember being there, but I think I blocked a vast majority of it from my memory. But anyway, thankfully we've got a few other wins over the Panthers that we don't need to delve into 50-point losses.
And it's a more mature looking Adam Dykes too. Look at his. He hasn't got quite the blonde tips and the.
No.
And that
one final thing on Dykes.
We have to be careful saying his name because the video might get pulled.
Yeah, true. Okay, so we'll refer to him as Adam Dykes. Adam versus Cade. But Adam, actually, I've given away the answer, but do you know who the halves were in that infamous 74-4 loss, which we will cover at a later date, but do you remember who the halves were that day for Parramatta?
It was Adam Dykes.
Another player with a Sharks connection. Mentioned a lot on the podcast by you and Franco specifically.
Oh, goodness. Jeff Robson?
Ooh, close.
No, who was it?
John Morris.
Oh, John Morris. Oh, yeah, it was John Morris. Yeah, of
Adam
course.
Dykes, John Morris laid on 74 points against a 10-11 man Sharks team. But anyway, we'll move forward and have a look at the form leading into this one.
We are going to review that one.
We will. We definitely will.
That is one loss.
That is one loss we will cover, and that unfortunately has the full 80 minutes on YouTube and plenty of news articles still available. This one, there's sweet FA on
Sweet
it. But
FA.
we'll move on and have a look at the
I'll
form
include
leading
that
into
in the
it.
link. Williams, we'll include it.
We'll
We'll
include
include
the
in the description if you want to watch the start of the tries. There's a
Yeah,
lovely YouTube series of all the tries from 2005, isn't there?
big shout out to Ryan Tilse. I hope you watch the show. We'll have to get you on board if you do. He's got a huge Sharks catalogue on YouTube, and he does have a couple of videos with all the tries from the 05 season. So that was very helpful here, seeing the 3 tries that was scored tonight. But I'll get you go to this next slide, and we'll have a look at the form going in. So obviously Sharks versus Panthers. So we're looking at the form for the previous year. Trial form wasn't readily available, and we know trials are not worth the score on the paper they're written on anyway. But the Sharks finished 11th the season before. Hard to believe, but they were a mathematical chance of making the finals up until the final round against the Cowboys in Townsville. That turned out their grand final was the 26-12 win over the Roosters at the Sydney Football Stadium, which is actually a cracker we'll cover another time, involving a peachy stealing kind of try for Anthony Minichiello, who was trying to will the ball over the dead ball line. Peachy put his left hand out and scored.
Was that the thief in the night?
Not quite. The thief in the night was against the Knights at home, the 64-14 one, where he just
So he's done it a few. It was basically the thief in the night play again.
It was, or the thief in the night play. That was, he just came running through and put his hand on it and scored. Kamali had a I suppose similarly thieving try against Robbie O'Davis that day, but this one, Peachy had given up a few in his career, unfortunately, that way, with willing the ball over the dead ball line and getting pickpocketed. On that day, he got one back over Mini, and Jason Kent was our halfback that day. But anyway, we beat the fancied Roosters, who made the grand final that year in the previous 2 years, 26-12. Unfortunately, we lost in Golden Point the week before against the Broncos. We had a pretty tough run into the finals. We were favourites against.
But I remember the Golden Point against the Broncos.
Yeah. We came back. We did the hard work. We came back from 12-0 down in that one, and I can't remember who scored. It might have been Sean Berrigan scored a kind of length of the field try for the Broncos in Golden Point. Yeah, which broke our hearts. We beat the Roosters. We went back to Shark Park on a rocking Saturday night, and we
were still in it at the end of that 2004 season. We win all 3 of those.
Yeah,
we get knocked out of week 1 in the finals. It would have been great.
It would have been. So I think we needed to. I think, unfortunately, even if we did beat the Cowboys, we need to rely on, I think, Tigers beating Newcastle or the other way around, 1-2.
Which we needed a result like that. Yeah.
The result we got.
And the Cowboys had a good final series in 2004.
We did. Well, they did. We also needed that day. We needed Souths to beat Raiders in Canberra, and I think Canberra put 60 points on, so we wouldn't have made it anyway. But we led. I think we led early in the second half in that one, and the Cowboys obviously stormed home. They beat the eventual premiers, the Bulldogs, in week 1 of the finals the following week. Then they beat the Broncos in Townsville. So they got that was. I mean, always with the NRL.
Tallis' last match.
Yeah, make the rules up as they go along, but they gave the Cowboys a home final.
The Broncos gave it up at Gordon Tallis' encouragement.
Yeah, so it was good. You're right, Gordon Tallis' final match.
The Broncos expected to win.
They did, and I think the final match, it was a Dow score. Do you remember what it was? I think it was 10-0. There you go. Look at you go. And then they obviously...
I told you I know a lot about this era of...
This is good. Winning. I'm glad you do. Maybe not about this match, but so they lost to the Roosters in controversial fashion in the prelim final, while the Bulldogs obviously took out the premiership after beating the Panthers in the prelim final, the week 3 of the finals, which Boldo had a look at the highlights before. The Panthers were leading in the second half.
Yeah, I remember that match. The Panthers were leading. There was some terrific work from Preston Campbell. He was just on fire in this match against the Bulldogs. And it was interesting, fun final series. So the Panthers beat the Dragons 31-30 after they were ahead 24-0. And the Dragons came back. And at the time, everyone was thinking, all right, well, the Dragons won't be eliminated here. And then the Dragons were the first 5th place team to be eliminated in the then McIntyre system. And so then coming into that, the Panthers, they'd had a pretty tough season. They'd had, obviously, once you're the premiers, everyone's out to beat you. They lost the World Club Challenge. They had a stack of injuries. And then they also had, I think it was 6 players in representative teams. They would have had, Reece Wesser in the Queensland team, and I think one other who I can't remember. And then 4, I think Craig Gale finally got picked in the
New South Wales. Yeah.
New South Wales.
Trent Waterhouse.
Luke
Lewis, Luke Rooney, all those players.
Yeah, they had a few.
Yeah.
So they had a few. But yeah, that Bulldogs match, they were in it, and there were a few 40-20s precedents, and then the Bulldogs kind of came back a little bit with storming, and they were pretty pumped up. And then Preston Campbell brilliantly gets them back into the game with an individual try. And then the Panthers drop the ball off the kickoff. They then do a short dropout. It fails. And then El Masri, I think he got 2 or 3 tries, El Masri, and carved them up a little bit. And then the Panthers just basically ran out of gas. They also had Reece Wesser got sin binned for a little bit too. So the Panthers coming into this, everyone thought they were one of the clear top teams and were pretty unlucky the season before. A round one clash against them was, all right, here we go. What's on?
Yeah, playing a contender from the get-go. And you're right, they could have had 2 back-to-back grand final appearances if it wasn't for that second half, I suppose, unluckiness and fall apart there. But you're looking at the form, and we'll talk about gains and losses in a second, but the Dragons were a good team that period, despite what we'll talk about a few weeks ago. But they're overrated, but they beat them. They smashed the Broncos. They beat the Eels, who were pretty fancy. They were up there around that time, and same as the Cowboys, who obviously had beaten us and gone on a great run. Yeah, so I mean, the Cowboys should have known.
The Cowboys put the finals run together. The next year they made.
They put the finals run. They made the grand final 05. But you look at that period, like the standout teams were. I mean, obviously the Bulldogs, the Panthers, the Roosters from 03, 04, and then the kind of bit of a changing the guard with the Cowboys and the Tigers having their big years this year coming in 2005, which is a little bit of a changing of the form. And spoiler alert, the big teams. So I think all 3 of the big teams, the Roosters, the Panthers, and the Bulldogs, all missed the finals this year. So after being the dominant teams over the preceding 2 years, so maybe it was aging squads. We'll have a look at the teams in a second. And I suppose I'll look at the teams and then I'll go through the gains and losses so we can see how much we changed versus how much the red hot Panthers have changed. Which, spoiler alert again, is not much, but we'll have a look
team
at
lists.
This great Sharks side. And number 1, the wingers David Simmons and Luke Cavell. Simmons in his first full year in first grade. The setters Nigel Vungana and Ryan McGoldrick. The halves Adam Dykes back with Brett Kamali as captain. The front row, the newly arrived Hutch Maeva from the Bulldogs, Matt Hilda waltzing at hooker, and Danny Nutley on the other prop position. The back row, Andrew Lomu, Phil Bailey, and a young Paul Gallen. The bench, Keith Galloway, Sam Eismunger, Greg Bird, Michael Sullivan, the coach, Stuart Raper. Whilst for the Panthers, we've got the back 3 of Reece Wesser, Trent Clayton, new arrival, and Luke Rooney. The centres, Luke Lewis and Paul Fronze, feeding Fronze.
Feeding
Fronze. I'm looking forward to talking about him soon. Preston Campbell and Craig Gower, the captain, are the halves. The front row, Joel Clinton, Luke Prittis, and future Shark Ben Ross. Back row of Joe Nalaval, Tony Pulatua, Trent Waterhouse, and the bench of Garrett Crossman, Frank Pulatua, Frank Pritchard, Luke Swain, the coach, John Lane. They had a wicked bench. Looking at to have just straight off the bat there, to have Frank Pulatua and Frank Pritchard, a very young Frank Pritchard there coming off the bench. That's dynamite. With that,
can I just say we're getting really good at reading out the team list to that length of time with the music.
Let's call us Rabs.
Let's call us Rabs. So going through, look, there's a few fun elements of the team list. So we were Hutch Maivia. I think it's Maivia, but it was just coming out of the time of the WWE wrestling with the Rocky Maivia. So everyone was calling him Hutch Maivia. So I remember calling that out so much when we had Hutch Maivia. Michael Sullivan, I think, was the player of the year for the Sharks the year before, coming off the bench.
Yes, that was his breakout year, 04.
Yeah, and so him off the bench, he was terrifically dynamic. And we had, and I remember Lats used to love Lomu as well. Yeah. So it's a fun Sharks team.
And that experience, you got Sam Eismunger off the bench, who he played for us for a fair while. Poor bugger had a lot of injuries, but it was good to see him thereabouts as well.
And then we had, coming out of the season prior, I think Wagner had scored 13 tries or something, but that was a modest number by his standards. That's right. So we were quite excited to think about, all right, well, Dykes and Kamali are going to throw the ball to Nigel Vungana a lot. What could possibly go wrong? There's no way that anyone could get in the middle of them. And never pass Wagner the ball. So
Well-
that's kind of the Sharks. But can we chat about the Panthers team for a little bit?
Yeah, we can, and I'll go through the gains and losses in a second. But yeah, the Panthers team is well worth the chat, given they were one of that was a form team of that peak generation they had early 2000s.
Yeah, so they were missing from the grand final team. They're missing Martin Lang, Paul Fadawira,
Ryan Girdler.
Ryan Girdler. That's a big one for them. So Girdler's last match was that Bulldogs match the season before.
Yeah, so Luke Lewis had moved from the wing into the centres, and they'd acquired Paul Fronze as well to cover.
And
so
they also had Famous Amos had come into
Yes.
their team the season before and gotten 24 tries in 23 matches.
Whew,
So he
that's
was
some return.
blistering
He
for
could
the
kick
Panthers.
as well.
He could kick. He was terrific virtual NRL player at the time. And so I remember looking at the Panthers team, none of the Panthers forwards were very good virtual NRL players, except for Luke Prittis. He was a beast. So he would always get you a forward.
Yeah, they wouldn't get you a forward try. So it was a forward try.
Nowhere near as good as Danny Nutley.
20,
he was like a gun.
20 hit-ups or 20 tackles, I think is what was
I think he had to do both. He had to do 20. I think he had to get 40 combined. Yeah, you had to get 40 combined tackles and hit-ups, but you had to have 20 or 10 hit-ups or something like that.
You know who was good at forward tries, and you're going to hate me for saying this? Our present coach, Craig Fitzgibbon, because he'd rack up the tackle count with all those flops he did.
Yeah,
same as Nathan Hindmarsh. Same as Hindmarsh. They were the big money players.
I think that's maybe why the whole flopping started, was the damn virtual NRL.
Maybe. Yeah,
so yeah, they were pretty good. This Panthers team. Tony Pulatua and Frank Pulatua and Frank Pritchard, they were damaging wide running players. Trent Waterhouse was big. They was like big players. And Luke Prittis had been around for ages, and he played the Super League tests and stuff. So he'd been playing for quite a while.
And they had two hard ass props too, with with Clinton and Ross. They didn't hold anything back there.
And we obviously know how good Preston Campbell was.
Yes.
Why, Chris Anderson, didn't you work out that Preston Campbell should have just played 5'8" with Brett Kamali? Why? Because of you, Matthew Johns.
Matthew Johns.
I'll say that.
Greg Bird. All right. Greg Bird came into the mix anyway, but I'll have a look at the Sharks had a fair turnover at the end of the 04 season. Our gains were Leaping Luke Cavell. So this was Luke Cavell's first game for the club. Adam Dykes, Phil Lulawai, Hutch Maeva, Vince Mellors, and Paul Mellor, who actually played reserve grade returning from England in this match, or this round. Our debuts that year, so there's a few big names. Cam Serraldo, Kevin Kingston, Clifford Marnua, your mate Bo Scott, and James Stosic. The losses, Chris Beattie retired, Matt Bickerstaff, Dean Bosnich, Andrew Delalana, Daniel Dumas, Pat Gibson, Michael Greenfield, Hassan Saylor, Paul Fronze to the aforementioned Panthers, Jason Clark-Kent, Matthew Reek, and Jason Williams. So
we didn't. I felt like we really traded up that team.
We did. And that's
I was bummed we lost Franze.
Well, we'll talk about him more. We've got him as a talking point when we talk about those that crossed over between the teams. But looking at the Panthers, it was a very small change. The only player they gained for that year was Paul Fronze. They had a few debuts in Matthew Cross, whoever he was, and a guy called Peter Wallace, who had a long and successful career. While their losses were, as you said, Ryan Girdler and Martin Lang both retired, Richie Fayoso, Amos Roberts, and Paul Fadawira. So Paul Fadawira obviously went off to the Tigers and won two premierships in 3 years, both the different varieties of cats. So
my brother Andrew loved Paul Fadawira. He got him in his virtual NRL team at the last second when he had no players and missed the draft.
Great player. So
he got a lot of good tries. And they're obviously missing Scott Sattler from that grand final team also.
Yeah, they are. You're right. So I think he retired. Did he retire the year after?
He went to the Tigers. He played one season for the Tigers.
He did. Yeah. And did he?
That's why.
Did he make it to the Gold Coast side?
No,
I don't care.
Make it to the Gold Coast side.
I don't care. I know he lives up there. I don't care for non-Sharks teams and things like that. So you'd get me on the
you're
NRL
talking
stuff.
to the most Sharks person ever. I don't even like to watch the state of. If there are no Sharks in the state of origin, I don't even watch it.
Well, funnily enough, we did have a Shark play in the state of origin this year, but we'll talk about that soon.
We know who that was.
Yeah, so actually, there's a few for us missing from that side. Jason Stevens was injured early in 2005, which what turned out to be his final year for the club. A
Mhm.
pretty successful one by his standards too. He scored a few tries, including one against Manly in that 68-6 win. So, and I remember he got a fairly big farewell the same day that Peachy was farewelled after our final round loss to South Sydney. But
Yeah.
early '05 was fun times. Well, I suppose we'll roll forward to the match, and I'll quickly whip through that one, given there's not much by way of highlights. So it's not like I'm going to be going into a play-by-play commentary like I did last week or the week before against the Storm with one try. But the first score was a penalty goal to Preston Campbell early on to go 2-0. So always take the 2. But I remember
Nice.
that the Sharks were looking good early with the ball, and that was a lot of that was coming from Adam Dykes. And you'll see the first try, which there is coverage about midway through the first half, about 15 minutes in, was Adam Dykes going left and then kind of pivoting in the spot, going right, cut across field. He did a no-look pass that copped a deflection, popped up into the hands of the debutant, Hutch Maeva, who barreled over. There was no way the defenders were stopping him from there at the
Very Tom Hazelton-esque.
It was so, and I think I remember Maeva scoring a few tries early that year. He was a bit of a try scorer.
Yeah, he was a cult. He was a cult hero before being a cult hero was cool.
Yeah, and he was in an era where I don't know how many interchanges there were at the time, but I remember he started with the Dogs and a lot of like the year before, and he carved up against us early in 2004, and everyone's like, "This guy."
So there were
doesn't have the
more
legs.
interchanges, but it wasn't unlimited. It was
Yeah,
still the era of 12.
It was like 12, so there was
Yeah,
obviously
so and
strategy
that's why we had the Sully and the Matt Hilda kind of swaps.
Yeah, but Maeva, I think the criticism of him when we signed him, but also with the Bulldogs here before, was he'd only do 10-minute stints. But here he was starting 15th minute scores. So that was at the southern end when there was no Southern or Monty Porter stand. Speaking of which, we packed 19,500 into the house that night.
Oh, it was packed.
And
you
there was
are
actually
missing a key element of this first try, actually, Williams.
Okay.
Which was it actually started with a pedestrian Brett Kawali inside ball to nowhere to Adam Dykes, and then Adam Dykes just went and set up the try.
Well, that's what set up Dykes going left initially, and then he kind of ran around, for want of a better term, like a headless chook for a second. Then
that's what Adam Dykes did. How good was he?
All three of these tries were from Adam Dykes.
Adam Dykes tries.
And not sure they're all Adam Dykes tries, and it looked like it was a great start. Noddy, the game manager, Dykes, the attacking flair. So we got the first try there.
In today's game, that would be the structure that you would think would work.
Yeah.
We're so excited for it. And then Adam comes out. All right, let's go. All right, so Sharks 6-2 up. What happens next?
One thing that try did remind me of in that era was that for 1 year only, they had a stand set up at the southern end in front of the big screen where there was a band that played.
Band?
Yeah, bonus points for telling us. I can't remember. I couldn't find online what the name of the band was, but they played all 12 home matches. And maybe that was associated with...
They were called Tony and the Sixers.
It was Tony and the Sixers, was it? Okay,
no, I just made that up.
I was going to say that doesn't sound right. Well, I'll definitely go to the video on that one, but I'm sure someone will know. So
if anyone knows that out there, please,
definitely
put it in the comments. The name of that band.
Anyway, the Panthers, they got a try back. They brought it back to 8-6. I don't know when that was. I can't remember. We can't find any footage of it. But anyway, the Panthers led at halftime, rolling forward early in the second half.
We don't even care who the Panthers' try was.
No, I do know that the tries were Reece Wesser got one, and I don't know, we'll have a look later who the other one was. But 8-6 it was. Then the all-important third try. This was another great one.
How often did the Sharks get the third try in these Chronicle matches? Basically, every single time the Sharks have gotten the third try, I've done this.
I don't know. I have to go back to the tape. I'm pretty sure we have it a few times.
You get it every single time.
More often than not, you're right. We do get the third try, but there's been a few exceptions.
It almost like it works 75% of the time, I think.
60% of the time, I reckon. 60%. But anyway, we'll go to the video.
How fun was
Adam
this
Dykes. Adam Dykes.
With
yeah, so I mean, you've seen it recently. You want to talk us through
it? Yeah, basically Dykes just makes a break and then just basically finds a way to create a bit of a mini gap for Vangana. And then Vangana, being Vangana, does a bit of a jink and shimmy around some dudes and then just runs about 40 meters and scores. And so
what was
really encouraging at the time was that you want to be able to create chances for your top attacking players and have them just you throw it to Vangana and he just scores. And so Dykes
Yeah.
creates a gap, gets it to Vangana, and he scores.
It was a little inside ball, I think, from Dykes. He kind of shaped right, got on the
Yeah.
outside, then turned it back inside, and Vangana. I think I don't know if it was West or someone tried to cut
West was coming
Vangana
for him,
down, and he broke out the tackle and scored next to the post. So that got us 12-8 up.
Money bags.
That happened right in front of where I was sitting. I was sitting in the older. Oh, I think they charged to sit there now. The free seats on the ET stand.
Yeah.
So not the ET stand, the Family Hill, in front of the Family Hill.
So our good friend Chris Kelly loved cheering him home. He used to go money bags. So he used to go Vangana. Money bags.
First try, I reckon his first try was the pick of the lot. That Golden Point won against the Eels in early 04. Yeah. So anyway, shortly after that,
same thing a year later with Vince Millar scored against the Eels.
We
didn't he?
No, he scored against the Knights at home. So that's where I'm.
No, he was the Knights one, and he did the.
He put that hand in the air. Now, I remember seeing him interviewed afterwards, and he refused to watch the replay. He's like, "Nah, it's my magic moment. It's my first try in first grade, and it's a Golden Point try against Andrew Johns, flying down the left wing, scoring the northwestern corner in front of the ET stand to win a Golden Point match. Was pretty special." But not long after that, we scored the fourth try, and the 19,000 strong Sharks grade was delirium. They were up 18-8, and this was another bit. So 5 minutes later, Dykes magic, get downfield again, drifts across field, and a lovely little short face pass to a hard-running Sam Eismunger, who bundled himself over the line. Yeah, it was. Eismunger was running the Nickera line. They couldn't stop him from there. Scored next to the post. Luke Cavell with his trusty left boot went perfect, 3 from 3 early on in his Sharks career.
That's right, because Luke Cavell came in and we were pumped about Luke Cavell
having a goal
kicking off Kamali. Yeah,
I remember seeing Cavell make his debut. I was on the Channel 9 game. I think it was in 03 or 04. Tigers at Leichhardt, and the way that
far.
Yeah, or they were talking about it, and I think he took it was a kick on the right touch line, so preferred side for a left footer, and he took it back about 30 metres. The average at the time, this is kind of, we're coming out of the sand. It's the sand era. People are having tees now. There was those old yellow tees that, like, if you mishit it, it'd break your foot. He was using one of those, and the commentators were going, "How far is he taking it back? 30 metres." And he cleared the top of the post. Like, he had that lovely reverse swing on it and just kicked the skin off the ball.
That's right.
We've got to sign that guy. We've got to sign that guy. And that, Stuart Raper did. So good on him. And I suppose the general manager at the time was Sludge, Steve Rogers. So good on them for acquiring him.
History, and Franco's been talking about him being the leaping coach since then. And Pierre's been looking up in the sky.
Yeah, leaping Luke Cavell. It's not a plane. It's not Superman. So anyway, we're up 18-8, and the Panthers do bring a try back from here to bring back to 18-14. I remember we kicked a late penalty goal with about 10 to go to put us 6 ahead. And from my research, I did see that Adam Dykes had a missed field goal attempt, but we held on. We won 20 points to 14, and we started our 05 season off with a win over one of the competition heavyweights. So
Sharks go equal first. The streak is on.
First. And that was back in the days where we won in round one somewhat more often than we do these days. So they won in round one in 07 as well. And was it 2008? Obviously, we did as well. So 06 we had a bye.
Yeah, so I remember thinking we didn't really win in round one very often at all.
07, 8, 9, we won in round one and to those 3 years.
Yeah, so this one we were like, oh, this is really good.
Yeah, so
look at us go.
Yeah,
all right, so Sharks win 20-14. I distinctly remember the penalty goal now that you mentioned it, thinking, yep, take the 2.
Absolutely, yeah, take the 2. Yeah, so they were a very dangerous side, and obviously Reece Wesser scored one of the tries, so that was, I'm pretty sure that would have been from a broken field play, so you're never safe against the Panthers, but we'll go forward to the talking.
Well, and also especially Preston Campbell, because you know that he can just cut you up.
Yeah, as he had on multiple occasions. 03, he'd scored against us at home. I think that they'd beaten us both matches in 04, and again following 2 years later in 07 when he started with the Titans and scored that try with his back. Dubious try. I remember Franco talking about it recently, but he was very dangerous even when he was playing against us.
Still breaks my heart.
Anyway,
we'll have to do that. We haven't done a segment on a most heartbreaking Sharks departures.
We will. I don't want
Rest
a
in
real world
Campbell,
event to trigger that, but yeah, obviously Campbell's up there. Matt Rogers is
Adam
up there.
Ritson.
Yeah, Matt Rogers, David Peachy. Or Peachy left at the end of the 05 season to go to England and then came back
Yeah,
and
Peachy. Ugh,
Peachy hurt.
Peachy hurt. There's so
So
many
missing
fun
him.
things we could do on our little show and stuff. We can also
Oh,
do with Peachy returning versus the Sharks.
that
Top
game, but
five. Oh,
him
when he
playing for
came back for
Souths when he
Souths and
scored against us at that Northern
he's
end, I
kicking
was like,
40.
Anyway,
Anyway.
good times. Look at the
All
good
right.
time.
Yeah, great
So,
times. It's never a
yes,
dull moment being a Sharks fan. All right, so
that's it. So first up, we had the return of Adam Dykes, and it was a travesty that he left to Parramatta. And around this time, I can't find the news article, but it'll be in a library somewhere. That I think he mentioned to either the Sun Herald or the Sunday Telegraph that
I know what you're
he
going to say here.
yeah, he was bleeding black, white, and blue. He was playing for Parramatta, and he was recording the Sharks games. And he'd come home and watch them, and he found himself. I think the Eels had obviously a okay 02, 03, 04. They didn't follow up what they were supposed to follow up from 01 with their, I suppose, choking, for want of a better term, the grand final. But he was desperate to get back to Cronulla. He admitted it was a mistake, and he's, I think, in the interview saying, "Look, I'm playing for one club and I'm supporting another. Like, I'm a professional, sure, but just take me back to where home is, where everything's nice in the world." And so he did. Stuart Rabbit got him back. I'm not sure what money it was on, but obviously he signed for 3 years and he saw out the rest of his career with us. Having a look at it, though, it was a bit of a sad end to his career. Unfortunately, in 07, he was in now the side, and his final match for us, unfortunately, he was wearing jersey number 19 on his back in a loss, a 29-28 loss to the Tigers in the third last round of 2007, where he was
and he's
partnering.
Injury plagued, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was partnering Brett Seymour in the halves there. He was injury plagued. He did, in that, especially that final season in 2007, obviously Noddy. Noddy had a few injuries that year too, so he also partnered players like Brett Seymour, even Henry Perinara, Brett Carney, and also Anthony Watts for a couple of matches. So he was in and out, had some good wins. I'll bring up his full record.
He was a favourite of the CSSC in that 2006, 2007.
We made his debut back in 1995.
He's just his last name, Dykesy.
Yeah, so he made his debut technically his debut was round 1 of the 1995 season, where we lost to Newcastle 6-4. Low scoring match there at starting 5'8". He only played 2 other matches that year, and then he kind of was in and out of the team for a fair while. Played 24 matches, most off the bench in 1996. Had an injury-affected Super League season in 97, and also
he couldn't quite crack it past Mitch Healy, could he?
Yeah, he was always Mitch Healy's understudy, which I think rightly so. Healy was the incumbent. Dykes wasn't.
But he did get past him a few times, and I remember thinking, if we were doing a podcast in 97, I'm sure the subject would have come up
for sure. And
Dykes or Healy would have been one of the great talking points. And
obviously 98 was Paul Green's last year, and Green had some injuries problems that year too. So Dykes had more time in the halves. Healy had the better or perceived better kicking game, and Healy was the main kicker. But I was going to say Dykes' kicking game was underrated.
Dykes could kick both feet.
Could kick both feet. And 01, I don't remember how many he actually got, but he got quite a few 40-20s. Like, obviously, we were talking about that 2001 semi-final against the Bulldogs, where he kicked a ripper 40-20, similar to the Harry Grant one that or Cooper Cronk one we'll talk about recently. I know Melbourne's got a few against us lately, but really good 40-20, and that was one of the assets that he had. Healy obviously had the towering bombs, but Dykes had a really good short kicking game, and obviously could peg a few 40-20s as well. So found his own in the halves, went from there, and I remember actually devastated. So it was a double whammy, like losing Matt Rogers, and then I think it was a matter of weeks later announcing that Adam Dykes was off to Parramatta. I was like, what is going on?
And John Lang.
Yeah, and John Lang. So John Lang was obviously the first to depart, then Matt Rogers, then Adam Dykes, and all leaving at the same time at the end of 01, but the way that they were announced. But Dykes,
remember we were so pumped for this.
Yeah.
This thinking, and given those ads, we just thought, Dykes and Kamali, they are going to be just an absolute dynamo combination. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah. And then Dykes departed. Look at his stats, though. He got 183 appearances for the Sharks, 47 tries, one conversion from 2 attempts. I remember that game where
I
he
remember.
was kicking. That was against the Northern Eagles in 2001, where I think it was Jason Ferris, poor guy, couldn't kick. Preston had a kick, he couldn't get him. We were all scoring out wide, and then Adam Dykes shanked one to the sideline, and then it was in close to the post. And I remember the crowd going, why are they giving it to Dykesy? Poor Campbell and Ferris have been taking all the hard shots, and they've given it to Dykesy, the one in front. But Dykes got the goal. Not a noted goal kicker, but he did kick 5 from 7 for Parramatta. But he got 3 field goals, which I thought he got more in his career. He got
I thought
a
he got
couple
more
in.
too.
He got 3 in 2000. I believe all 3 were in 2001. So they were against Parramatta in that 13-12 win.
I remember that one.
Early 2001.
I was at that game.
Round 2, we got pumped by Dragons week 1. We're playing the premiership favourites, and we scrapped home. Dykes kicking a shaky field goal with less than a minute to go to win that one. He also got a field goal against the Panthers at Penrith later that year. We were winning quite soundly there. And he also got the field goal against the Knights in the infamous 49-30 match where Joey Johns also gave him his forearm and also gave away the Dally M in that moment.
He did.
Yeah, so I thought he kicked more field goals for us, but just 3 in the one season, and that was that. For Parramatta, he got 38 appearances, 11 tries, 5 from 7 with the boot, and 2 field goals. So he finished with a career tally of 249 points, 221 appearances is quite a few, given how
that's a lot. That's no
injury affected he was. Yeah,
200 NRL games is a lot. Like Bo Ryan did 160.
Yeah,
so 220 is.
And not that I cared or followed Bo Ryan's career, but I didn't think he was as injury prone as Adam Dykes was. Dykes always seemed to be under an injury cloud.
Yeah, he did.
Even so much as to when there was an interview with him when Cade Dykes made his debut. And Cade Dykes, I think, had dropped a kickoff in a juniors game or whatever. So they went down the park. I think it might have been some big public holiday, Christmas Day. And Dykes kicked it, say 100 kickoffs to him to make sure he didn't drop one. And I think Dykes, the poor bugger, ended up tearing his hamstring.
We forget is how many
tore
times,
his hamstring.
How many times they must practice those kickoffs? Because Adam Dykes did used to catch the kickoffs.
Yeah. So you're right. How often do they go through that play? But yeah, Dykesy, I think so many good memories of him. I do distinctly remember him scoring at one. He was, I wouldn't say he was the most emotional guy, but I do remember a try that he scored against the West Tigers. I think in 2000 when we were playing away to them, we lost by 2 with a controversial penalty goal given away late. But he scored, I think we were down by 10, and he scored 2 quick tries to get us back. And the second try he scored, he was absolutely giving it to the Tigers fans and just firing up. And I was like, oh, how good's this guy? Usually he's Mr. Ice cold killer, but he was ripping in that day. And obviously the games in 01 where we won't talk about the prelim final, but earlier than that, where he and Campbell had torn up Newcastle and Brisbane and all comers prior to that.
We've done a Chronicles on that 2001 Bulldogs match, haven't we?
We have the Bulldogs, obviously the Bulldogs match in the finals as well, but the Broncos game, week 1 of the finals, the Broncos game late that season too, where we beat them. So yeah, Dykes just great player, and I think that there
his last name.
That screen grab is of him throwing the dummy and then stepping back inside and then turning back inside to Vangana. So, yeah, he did add plenty of spark to what was a bit of a predictable and stayed 2003, 2004 Shark side. Coming in 05 were better times. But we'll go to the next topic. And the tries. So it was all about Adam Dykes, but some good follow, good backing up. One thing I did note on the Vangana try was he had plenty in support. He cut up the middle, but there was plenty in support too. I think it might have even been Michael Sullivan trailing him on the left. So
yeah,
we only scored 3 tries, but we looked like scoring more. In the following weeks, we went up by a lot early against the Bulldogs at home and won that one 26-12. I think we put the Q in the rack a bit there, but we're up 20. I think it was 20-6 at halftime with some entertaining tries being scored there too, including Dykes being at the forefront, Luke Cavell getting his first try for the club. So things were looking up, especially Vangana too. You're right, a measly 13 try return that the previous year started scoring at will and then would play 5-8 later in the year whilst poor Dykes was injured in the famous 68-6 win. So do you remember any particular 05 tries?
Well, we just remember all the ones in the 68-6 match, really.
Yeah.
So those ones, And then just thinking back, I remember going down to the Dragons 28-2 match, 28-22, sorry,
Yeah,
in the semi-final.
the first week of the finals, which was
First week of the finals. That one was a bit of a bummer.
yeah. Dykes missed that match, I believe.
Yeah, Wagner was 5'8".
Yeah. So yeah, look.
Yeah, that's even another example. That's right, because Dykes was injured at the end of the season, wasn't he?
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Dykes had injuries. Looking at it here, we'll go through his. I think the next topic is where I'll go through. It's a bit of a node to Adam Dykes' episode, but the Noddy Dykes combination.
Can we get? I reckon of all the ex-Sharks players, I reckon he's the one I'd like to get on the most to go through one of these matches
for sure.
Because he is also quite an intelligent guy too, and also he's connected to the team now with his son Kate. It'd just be fun. So if you're watching Adam Dykes, get in touch with us. We'd love to have you on the show.
Maybe we need to get him, Dean Treaster. I know he's done an interview in the last few years. So yeah, and I know Dean Treaster follows us. So start getting some players on. It'd be good to go down memory lane with these matches.
Players, I'd love us to have Hutch Mayava on.
Yeah,
that would be awesome.
Yeah, Phil Luluai, Eddie Sewer,
Phil Luluai, Eddie Sewer, Michael Sullivan, any of them. It's just. It'd just be great. So, all right. So, talk to us about Noddy and Dykes.
When I say Dykes Kamali, what do you think straight away?
I just think, why didn't it work? Why?
Exactly. Now, why?
Why didn't it work?
We all know it didn't work now, but the excitement around it at the time, the fact that we won early on, the fact that pre this match, John Lang was saying that they could be the best halves pairing in the comp, and he had a very handy halves pairing himself. Obviously, he had a connection to Dykes given his time at the Sharks, but Kamali was a state and Australian representative. Kamali was off the back of a kangaroo tour at the end of 03-04 when they went over there and won 3-0. So they
even had Kamali at Alistair Johns and put him to hooker, hadn't he?
Yeah, he had. You're right. In 2000, that's it. Yeah, Kamali, 2000 Kamali, so post 99 premiership with the Storm, and he was the form halfback in the competition, both ousted him at state and national level. So
then I also remember a few games in when it was clearly not working. Phil Gould called out that he thought they should switch positions.
Yeah, you're right, which is interesting, but I suppose in hindsight would work. Like I thought Dykes is your creator and Noddy's your game manager, but I suppose you're right. They got into each other's way. Early 05, things were looking good. I've got their records.
And this was before it was left side, right side type play, wasn't it?
It was first receiver, second receiver. So Noddy, I suppose, did like to skip to the line and then play short balls or flat balls, and that was
so they thought that Noddy should have been throwing to Bailey and to Wagner and everyone else, and they thought that. If you're going to have Dykes running to the line, then he's got to be the first receiver. That was the thinking.
Yeah, you're right. So the changes in application of how you do it. Also, too, I don't know if there was even just jersey numbers, for example. Would you be able to do that? I'm sure Kamali's I've heard him interviewed plenty of times. He's a prominent member of the media these days. He definitely seems like a team first kind of guy. But I suppose maybe Stuart Raper, young coach, the aura around, he's the halfback. He wears number 7. Can he do that in a different way and go, hey, I'm going to name you guys at 6 and 7, but I want you guys to swap. We're the same numbers, but we're going to swap. I'm not sure. I suppose that they were winning in early 2005. They had a good start to the year, so there was no need to swap. There was a few early signs that it wasn't quite working, but looking at rounds 1 to 11, we had 8 matches with them together. There was a couple of times where injury affected and origin affected having the two together. We had 7 wins, 2 losses. Rounds 12 to 26, though, unfortunately, of that year, we had 10 matches. We had 3 wins and 7 losses with the combination. So things were starting to go by the wayside there, up to and including.
That's right. I distinctly remember the 3 and 7.
Yeah, so we limped into the finals after we were definitely entrenched in the top 4 mid-season. And that was obviously the
didn't we win the first at the start of the season? We were like 5 or 6 or something, weren't we? We won a whole bunch.
We did. We had a great start to the season. Sam, I'll just get that for you, what that actually looked like. But the wheels are starting to fall off a bit on the combination, and that was where I think some injuries were plaguing. I remember there was a huge push amongst, I'm not sure the media, but maybe it was the fans for Wagner to be 5'8" before that eventually it did happen for the Manly game, and we won 68-6, and they didn't do it again until the...
Well, that was also because Wagner wasn't getting the ball. But this
Yeah.
season really also fell apart. That's right, because going into the State of Origin, I don't know, we're kind of getting forward to the fallout. But when I distinctly remember that the Sharks were top 4 going into game 1, and then Kamali throws that intercept, and we basically never recovered.
Yeah, you'd say Kamali didn't recover confidence-wise, and we didn't recover as a team. Looking, I suppose, at the overarching Noddy Dykes thing, just to put some stats behind it that unfortunately confirm the fact that it's twofold. The combination didn't work. The team was a little bit dysfunctional, and that was a function of the halves and how they were operating. But 05 finished with total of 19 games, 10 wins, 9 losses. 2006, it didn't get much better. They only played 4 games together in the first half of the year, and that resulted in 1 win, 3 losses. And then the back end of the year, Dykes returned from a long-term injury. First time they were back together, I remember there was a lot of conjecture around, should they be doing this? We're changing a winning team. We went to Newcastle, we won 26-16, and everything looked good. The CWC knocked over a fence. A curse happened, and then we lost 10 straight. And of that 10 straight, Dykes and Kamali were involved in all of them. So they had 14 games in 2006. They would win 1 as a pairing and lost 13. So that took a fair beating to it. To Ricky Stewart's credit, he came in round 1 of 2007 and said, "I'm keeping the pairing. They are our 2 best halves. They will learn to play together." So they won. They beat Penrith first up 18-0. They had a few early season wins. Unfortunately for Adam Dykes, I suppose Brett Seymour came in and made his debut in a 40-4 win over the Dragons at home on a Monday night. And that started to see the beginning of the end for Dykes' career. He was spending a lot of time named in jersey numbers 18, 19, 20, 21, more acting as the injury replacement rather than the starting half. And he'd
lost a bit of his speed with all the injuries.
He'd played only it was a handful of matches. He had 8 games where he paired with Kamali that year. They had 4 wins, 4 losses. Some notable wins though. He did. So they did partner for a win over the Broncos at home, 16-8 that year against the reigning premiers. They also beat the Bulldogs away. I remember that one distinctly. That was the Isaac De Gois length of field try game. Then they lost the Roosters at home, and then they again lost the Warriors at home. So it wasn't terrible. They got a 50% win ratio. We weren't a great team then. But to Dykes' credit, he also partnered with a lot of inexperienced halves. So he partnered with Seymour a few times. He partnered with Brett Carney, including he partnered with Greg Bird in the infamous 22-20 win over the Warriors in Auckland. That was the Luke Cavell missed penalty goal. No one tipping the Sharks, but Dane Wheeler game. So Dykes did have some highlights there, but as a pairing, it wasn't great. 41 matches, 15 wins, 26 losses, a 37% win record. Do you put it on the halves? Do you put it on the team? It was a good team, but it wasn't a great team.
They just structurally didn't quite get it, and we needed a stronger coach. And then by the time Ricky Stewart turned up, I think Ricky Stewart did kind of fix it, but they were both at the end of their careers then, and it was they weren't dynamic enough. But both terrific players in their own rights.
So 07 was not his second last year with the club. Obviously 08 they took him to a prelim, and then he departed to the Bulldogs and went to a prelim again. So class player, Brett.
Both absolutely brilliant players, those two. Absolutely brilliant. All right, on to the next.
This is a weird one.
Oh, you love this subject. This is like your favourite bit of this whole damn show.
Good pitch. Good. I remember blowing up about the time, and I couldn't find any content apart from the odd passing comment on a couple of the forums, including a Melbourne Storm forum of all things. But the NRL round 1, 2005, they trialled something. Nothing like the NRL just changing the rules on the fly and just trialling things in competition matches. But they had this referee swap business. So started the match with Jason Robinson referee. It seemed to be that the reason for it was if there wasn't a bunker at the time, but the match official or the match overarching official from the NRL, if they weren't happy with the field that the referee had for the match, they could then swap them out. So Shane Hayne was sitting on the bench at about 10 minutes into the second half. Jason Robinson got hooked. In came Shane Hayne. We somehow went on to win despite our record with good old Shane. But I know John Lang had a fair bit to say about it, and so did the Panthers, in that he wasn't happy with the way that happened because Jason Robinson had a feel for the match, got swapped out, suddenly had a brand new referee that had no fear, was blowing penalties left, right, and centre. And yes,
no one talked. Hands here, Williams.
No one talked with their hands
there,
David.
Talking with their hands, Shane.
No one talked with their hands. I'm a passionate guy, Shane. I'm talking with my hands. Well, see you later. But yeah, so that happened. It was bizarre. I remember it being a big thing at the time, but trying to find evidence on it, right, other than the fact that in the replay you'll see that it was definitely before 2009 when they had the dual referee system, and there was a different referee blowing the whistle for tries, but that was why. So great picture of Shane Hayne there with that's not him setting Peachy off, because he set Peachy off after Peachy was already halfway up the tunnel. But
no, it's not. So, I just grabbed a better picture of Shane Hayne than the one that we could get from the
old grainy stream. And the Panther Sharks, we talk about the Tiger Sharks connection. There's a fair Panther Shark connection there. We rattled them off before. You've got obviously Preston Campbell, Martin Lang and John Lang.
Luke Lewis,
Paul Franze, and that's why I put Paul Franze on there. I was like, I forgot
that feeding Franze. How good was his flick pass that he used to do?
The flick pass, the fact that he forced Paul Mellor, one of the form centres, I would argue one of the form centres of the competition, to the wing, and Paul Mellor was a revelation there for him when he didn't make his debut until, he did make his debut in the infamous 52-8 loss to the Knights, the Johns brothers battle billing, but then he kept his spot, scored his first try against the Warriors in a heavy loss over in Auckland, but then kept his spot, went from there, scored a double against the Dragons in that second week finals match where we put 40 on when Matt Johns retired, I suppose, went off injured with his neck, and Greg Bird was absolutely unbelievable, scoring a try as an 18-year-old in a semi-final with Dean Treaster picking him up and giving it to the Dragons. That was a classic. And Paul Franze was one of the best players on the field there. So strong, and got cruelled by an ACL at the, I suppose, return to Cogra match, where basically we got wheeled out as the fodder for the Dragons. Well, I'm still angry about that match. That even the coverage and everything. And I think Knight at the time going, the best thing for the NRL is the Dragons winning today. I'm like, go away. No one likes the Dragons.
I'm surprised Corey Parker wasn't commentating.
Oh, this was all the usual suspects, but they were talking about, it's so great being back at Cogra. It is an SHIT hole. Don't care about the history. It is. And
it's not even in Cogra. It's in Carlton. But anyway.
Exactly. I lived in Carlton for the first 5 years of my life, and it was, maybe that's why I hate it so much. But go. Anyway, we're on Dragons podcast. But Paul Franze, big shout out to him. Got cruelled by injury. He scored 11 tries for the Panthers that year. Then he disappeared to play in England. Had a fairly lengthy career over there, which is good to see after it looked like his career was dead and buried after a really ordinary 04 season for us. I don't think he actually, I guarantee he hadn't got over that injury yet. It lost his pace. And it seemed like his footwork as well. So went on to have a decent career in England, and then played a season of rugby union as well. So good on him.
He did too.
Yeah. So any other favourite Panther Sharks that you have? Craig Stapleton.
The
prop that we...
Well, the favourite is also Preston, actually.
Yeah.
We didn't even mention him in that kind. It's so
I know. There you go.
We could have even done a... and maybe we should do that for this show that we're doing tomorrow.
Matthew Reek.
All-time great Panther Sharks team, combined team of players that have played for both.
Yeah.
Actually, we should do that. We'll do that.
I'll let someone else do the research, but...
we can just throw the team together. It'll take a second. All right, sounds good. All right, on to the next.
Yeah, so we'll have a look at the fallout, I suppose. That was the final score. Luke Predis obviously was their hooker. He scored the other try for the Panthers. We don't care about that. 20-14, the win. The Sharks would go on to finish 7th after, as we said, being entrenched high up the ladder early on and then falling away, while the Panthers, a bit of a changing the guard there. Them, the Roosters and the Bulldogs, all aging teams, missed out in the finals. Looking at our season there, we lost to Manly second round. Brett Kamali was actually cited in this match for a high shot and had a 1 week suspension. And that was the game that Keith Galloway got hit by John Hopewadi, and Manly played a majority of the match with 12 men and still beat us 46-20, because that's what tends to happen at Brookvale. We then beat Parramatta.
What happened in that match was despite us being a player up, we just didn't have the size in the forward pack. And so without Keith Galloway, we just didn't have we just got monstered strength-wise. And so we
Yeah,
kind of
Manly rolled through.
had the energy to come back. And the Manly guys are just bigger. What did they have? Can't remember the name of the guy that they had then. There was one front rower that we just couldn't deal with.
They had a big side. That of Manly actually went through and made the finals for the first time in a long time. They finished in 8th, despite us beating them 68-6 in the return match at Shark Park. So some high scoring big matches both ways there. But we beat Parramatta. We beat the Bulldogs 26-12, the reigning premiers. We smashed the Cowboys 38-6. I remember that one. I think Carl Webb, the late Carl Webb, commiserations to him and his family, scored early on for the Cowboys. I'm like, oh, this isn't looking good. I think the Cowboys were highly rated, and we were the outsiders, and we smashed them with a big second half. We lost to the Broncos after leading 12-0, went down 16-12. But then we went on a bit of a run. We beat Melbourne, beat Warriors, beat Canberra, beat Penrith without our origin players. And then the wheels started to fall off a bit. I distinctly remember the game against Parramatta where it was billed as a top of the table clash, and it was. I think it was first 1v2, and they led 22-0 at halftime. We fought back to 22-16. Paul Gallen with a great individual try to bring it back to 22-16, and then they ran away with it. I think it was early days of, actually Tim Smith was a few years later. North Queensland then put 50 on us, and that put the end to our premiership credentials, losing 56-14 in Townsville. We lost to the Tigers at Campbelltown, and we jagged a few wins there. A solid, gutsy 16-10 win over the Roosters at home on a Friday night. Our losses to the Baby Broncos and Souths, beating Newcastle with that golden point try by Vince Mellars. And there was just very much like win-loss, win-loss, win-loss. A good win over Melbourne at home. That was Bo Scott's debut, 40-16, beating Manly 68-6. But they were the last two wins we'd have that year. We lost the Roosters at the Sydney Football Stadium, who weren't great that year. We got pumped by Newcastle, and Newcastle finished the year with, which was a bit sad. This was Jason Stevens and David Peachy. Much bigger, I suppose, farewell for him. Final home match, big turnout, and Souths weren't great at the time, and we lost. Yeah,
was it 26-12 or something? Is that right?
26-22. Paul Miller scored a good length of field try in that one, but I remember that one, we didn't, even though we were thereabouts on the scoreboard, didn't feel like we were ever in it. South had really muscled up, and I think they were starting to build towards something, and we were limping into the finals, and you're right, we lost 28-22 after leading by 8 early in the second half against the Dragons, and they turned it on. I think Trent Barrett kicked a 40-20. There was a blatant forward pass, I think, by Michael Ennis in the lead up to one of the Dragons' tries, which I was blowing up about. But,
and Jason Riles scored that try and did push-ups.
Yes, you're right.
There's an interesting moment that I remember from that Souths match was the Sharks had gone down, and the band at the back of the stadium, they did a thing for Stevens and Peachy. And I remember feeling really sorry for Glenn Wheeler because he had to try and amp the crowd up. And so I remember him saying, the Sharks, we're marching on to the finals. We're going to win 4 in a row, and we're going to win the grand final. And I remember it became a saying of my family, just 4 in a row, Wheeler, because it just seemed absolutely ridiculous that we could have conceivably thought that we could win 4 in a row. And
could
then
lose I remember... South, where'd they finish that year? That was pretty low.
Close to the bottom.
Yeah, good. Lose to one of the bottom sides.
South when they were close to the bottom.
On the eve of the finals, and playing against the team that came second, the Dragons in Wollongong. Yeah, obviously.
That was also in the era when the team that played 7th had a really good record beating the team that came second.
They did. I think we're the first one for a while. Yeah.
To not win.
Yeah.
Classic Sharks.
Always us. Break the hoodoo or keep the hoodoo going, one of the two. But that was that. It was good fun, though. That's why I distinctly remembered, and I thought, no, we have to cover this one first because it's similar era to this one. Obviously, that Panthers side only won 1 premiership, but they could have won 2, actually, if they got past those Bulldogs and then the Roosters the following week. So
they just fell out, didn't they, those Panthers? Yeah. They just never really... I think, what was it? I think maybe Craig Gower just went off a little bit. He was starting to get a bit old by then.
Yeah, he was. I think he left mid-season that year, the following year, off to England, and then didn't he come back and play for the Knights?
Didn't he just say, I'm going to stop playing or something? Didn't he?
I think so. He may have just quit and go. And then he played for the Knights at some stage. He played in England. He ended up playing for the Italian rugby union team.
That's right.
But it did start to fall apart. Luke Rooney went to European rugby as well. Luke Lewis is one of the main players that kind of carried on
around.
through. See, Preston Campbell went to the Gold Coast Titans. For us, we obviously limped into the finals 05. 06 we were looking good again, and then had that 10 loss in a row. Stuart Raper departed. 07 we were building towards 08. 08 was good, and then we've spoken about 09 onwards a lot. So
oh goodness,
that's an hour. But thanks for playing. Good fun. Tell us about your favourite Hutch Mayover moments. The greatest Nigel Munger tries. Good to see Sammy Eismunger getting in there as well. Another player crippled by injury, but most importantly, we'll take our hat off to Adam Dykes and say thank you, Adam, for everything you did for the club. Thank you for everything that your son is doing. Hopefully we'll see him in the first grade side soon. Hopefully not at the expense of anyone through injury, but hopefully we see him get to build on, because he's got plenty of promise too, and it'd be great to keep that dynasty going. So any closing comments?
No, other than that, yeah, thanks for a great session, Williams. I'm thoroughly enjoying these Cronulla Sharks Classic Chronicles. If anyone has any that they would like Williams to go through, by all means, get that in the comments of any of our channels. We do look at the ball. And if you've even got any requests and you want to make any of us actually go through the pain of reliving a match, I know that I will be the one who's down for doing the Eels 74-4 loss. And so we'll make everyone relive that one. As of course, we've had a lot of fun making Scott Latino rewatch. Maybe we'll make him do the Dragons 24-8. He can do that one with you.
We've spoken about that enough. Oh, gosh, speaking about it once is more than enough. But yeah, so we won't speak of 2000 -1. But yeah, anyway, thanks, guys. Up.
Yeah, up, Cronulla.